Part 2.
Wednesday afternoon, I sat in my car in a parking lot and made a decision that terrified me. I was going to tell Michael, not because the internet told me to, but because I realized that any life I built on lies was just a prettier version of the life I'd escaped. I was still in a cage. I was still performing. I was still divided. And I deserved better. Michael deserved better. If he left me, it would hurt like hell. But at least I'd be free. I drove to his office. His secretary looked surprised. He's in a meeting, but let me tell him you're here. 5 minutes later, he emerged, concern written all over his face. Hey, what's wrong? Are you okay? I wasn't okay. I was falling apart. But I asked him to take the rest of the afternoon off, and we drove to the park where he'd proposed. We sat on a bench overlooking the water, and I told him everything. I started from the beginning. My poverty, my mom, my desperation. I told him about Miriam, about the choice I made, about the 3 years I lived a double life. I told him about the clients and the hotel rooms and the way I'd learned to leave my body so I wouldn't have to feel. I told him about the shame and the survival and the slow process of convincing myself it hadn't happened. And then I told him about the text, the blackmail, the $10,000, the threat. He didn't say anything for a long time. He just sat there, staring at the water. I waited for him to leave, to tell me he couldn't do this, that I was a completely different person than he thought I was. Instead, he cried. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, not angry, just sad. I would have helped. We could have figured it out together. You didn't have to carry this alone. And that broke me more than anger ever could. Because he was right. I'd chosen to be alone with this, to be isolated by my shame, to build a relationship on a foundation of lies. What do? He asked. And I realized that we was still there. Despite everything, despite the lie I'd been living, he was saying, we. We decided together. We weren't going to pay the blackmailer. We were going to report it to the police. And we were going to tell the truth about my past, completely and honestly, because living in fear was worse than facing the consequences.
Before we continue, we would like to thank all of you who support us by subscribing, liking, and sharing our content. The only appreciation we ask of you is that you subscribe, like, and share this video if you are not yet one of our subscribers. Thank you.
I went to the police station Thursday morning, Michael beside me. I told them everything. They were surprisingly understanding. The detective explained that they'd been tracking a blackmail ring operating in the city, targeting vulnerable women, often sex workers, using their pasts against them. They'd been hoping someone would come forward. With my evidence, the texts, the phone number, the threats, they had enough to start investigating. What happened next unfolded over weeks. The police traced the blackmailer to someone in Miriam's network, someone who'd been keeping records of everyone who'd ever worked in the escort business, using that information for extortion. They arrested him. They found videos and photos he'd been threatening to release, and they secured them. They offered me victim protection and support. And most importantly, they promised that my information would be handled confidentially. The hardest part wasn't the police investigation. It was telling people in my life. My mom cried when I told her. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying. "I never wanted you to feel like you had to do that." I had to tell her that I wasn't a victim of her circumstances. I was someone who made choices, bad choices sometimes, but choices nonetheless. I had to own my story instead of hiding from it. Michael's family was harder. They knew I came from a poor background, but they didn't know the extent. When they found out I'd been a sex worker, there was distance, judgment. But Michael stood by me. He told his family, "The woman I love had to do difficult things to survive. That doesn't change who she is now. And if you can't accept that, then you don't have to be part of our lives." Some of them came around, some didn't. I learned to be okay with that. The wedding was postponed for 6 months while everything was investigated and processed. When we finally got married, it was smaller than we'd originally planned, but it felt more honest. Michael's family members who showed up knew my truth. My friends knew my truth. I wasn't performing anymore. I was just me. Complicated, flawed, but real. Here's what I wish I'd known earlier. Shame thrives in secrecy. The moment I stopped hiding, the shame lost its power. My past doesn't define me, but denying it gave it control over me. The choices I made were survival. They weren't shameful. They were brave. I was a 20-year-old girl doing what she had to do to build a better life. That's not something to hide. That's something to survive. If you're dealing with blackmail, here's what I learned. Pay immediately if your life is in danger. But if you're being extorted over something from your past, something you've already moved past, the extortionists are counting on your shame to keep you paying forever. You can't buy freedom with money. You can only buy freedom with truth. Go to the police. They're not there to judge you for your past. They're there to protect you now. And if you're doing what I was doing, if you're surviving through sex work right now, I want you to know that you're not broken. You're not damaged beyond repair. You're surviving. But please, please, be strategic about it. Save money, have an exit plan, develop skills that will get you out. And when you do get out, be gentle with yourself. You're carrying trauma that people who've never been desperate can't understand. Therapy helped me. Finding people who understood helped me. Time helped me. Michael and I are still together. We're building a life that's real, that's honest. I still get moments of panic when my phone buzzes unexpectedly. Still have nightmares sometimes about those hotel rooms. But the difference is, I'm not carrying it alone anymore. And I'm not ashamed anymore. I survived something incredibly difficult, and I came out the other side. That's not something to hide. That's something to claim. My engagement was at stake, but what I really risked was my freedom. By telling the truth, I got both back.